Welcome to the Labyrinth. My guest today is Dr. Shawn Baker. He's an orthopedic surgeon, international speaker, best-selling author, and a world champion athlete. He's a leading authority on nutritional therapy and raising awareness about how it affects chronic diseases. He's also the CMO of a company called Revero, which is a community platform that helps implement a carnivore-based elimination diet. Dr. Shawn Baker, welcome to the Labyrinth.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me here. I always, like I said, I look forward to the opportunity to speak to different audiences. So it's always nice to speak to the folks in India. So thank you.
Yeah. So how did you start your journey with carnivore diet?
Well, my journey to a carnivore diet basically started like many people's journey, just trying to improve my health. I was, like you mentioned, I've been an athlete my whole life, a pretty successful athlete, and working as a surgeon, thinking that you know a lot about health. My mid 40s, I started to notice my health was starting to deteriorate. I had too much body weight. I was seeing problems with blood pressure and things like that. So I started looking into nutrition because I was already kind of maxed out on what I could do from an exercise standpoint. I was already training very hard. And so I started playing with different dietary strategies, from a low-fat, high fruit and vegetable diet, which is what I initially utilized, which did help me to lose some weight, but I found it to be very challenging to sustain. I was not, I was hungry all the time. I was not particularly happy. So I transitioned into more of a Paleolithic diet, and then eventually a low carb diet, a ketogenic diet. And then after about 4 or 5 years, I discovered a carnivorous diet, and that was what honestly gave me the best results and made me feel the best. And I saw the best body composition, the best physical health, best performance, and so I've been kind of doing that now for getting close to 6 years now. So I've been a pretty big proponent of meat-based diets in general.
Did you face any difficulties while initially starting the carnivore diet?
Well, I mean, as far as difficulties personally, with my own health, I mean, there was a little bit of a transition period where I had a little bit of a headache for about a week. Beyond that, really went pretty well for me. Now, as far as other people accepting the diet, yeah, there was a lot of pushback against that. A lot of people thought, that's crazy. You're going to have heart disease. You're going to have scurvy. Your colon is going to fall out from lack of fiber, and all those things were being suggested as problems. Of course, none of those things happened. And now, like I said, nearly 6 years later, none of those things have continued to happen. And now we have not just myself, but now many, many tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of people that have tried it successfully and have noted, just general improvements in their health.
What would you tell to all these vegans who claim that their vegan diet is the healthiest diet?
Well, I would say that, if we want to compare it to like a standard junk food diet, then they probably improve their diet a little bit. But I think that honestly, a diet that is, rich in whole foods, and I include meat in that category, and doesn't have much junk food, is going to be superior to just a, isolated vegan diet. I see that, if one of your goals might be to maintain lean tissue, lean muscle mass, stronger bones, on and on and on, better performance, than a diet that has meat in it, and even a fully meat-based diet is far better than a vegan diet.
Yeah. You know what I find really entertaining? I find your Instagram reels where you react to vegans and you eat beef while you're reacting to vegans making their own recipes and talking about veganism. I find them really entertaining. What motivated you to start those?
I think I did it one time just as a joke, and so many people liked it. So I said, well, if the people are enjoying it, it's providing some entertainment. Because, part of social media, you need to keep it interesting for people. And if people find it funny, that's great. At the end of the day, what I'm trying to show, obviously there's an obvious contrast. What I'm eating is very simple. It works, it's effective, whereas they have to make these elaborate, concoctions, and they really have to stretch things to try to pretend they're eating meat or doing something that's kind of just, you see the absolute absurdity of it when you show a direct contrast to it. And I think that's the point, that nutrition should not be difficult. It should not be challenging. It should not require you to spend all day in the kitchen preparing meals. It should be, very simple. And I think that's how most species on this earth do it. They do it simple, and what works for them, what's very effective, and what has worked for humans for a very long time. Now, again, you're in a country where vegetarianism is very much a component of a lot of what folks do. And, obviously there's people that make that work as well. But I think, when we sort of try to, because we have a lot of, like I said, I don't really care what people eat. They can eat what they just have the freedom to eat whatever you want to eat. And we have a lot of vegans that want to just force it's almost a religion on people. It's like, you must eat the way I eat, or you're a bad person, or you don't care about the environment, or you don't care about animals, or you're just going to get sick. I have no interest in being sick. I'm not eating the way I do because I am trying to have heart disease or cancer or anything like that. I'm doing it because it truly is what gives me the best health. And I can say that both subjectively and objectively in many ways, so yeah, I think the job of social media, for what it's worth, I put up a lot of studies. It doesn't get the response. It's kind of like, if I put up studies all the time, no one would read them, no one would see them. So I have to do the goofy stuff in order to have people read the more serious stuff, I think.
Yeah. What advice would you give to Indians who are trying to get on the carnivore diet? Because in a lot of Indian states, beef has been banned. So are there any other alternatives?
Well, I think that, lamb is quite a good alternative. And again, how much access do you have to that? It's going to depend on, where you're at and how what your resources are. Obviously as vegetarians, dairy and eggs are already in the diet for many people. And so those can be good. I think, goat, if that's an option, some people have access to, I think my understanding is maybe the buffalo are still allowed. And so you could maybe use that as a source of meat. Yeah, I mean, you really any, seafood, a lot of animals will work. I think one of the things is the more protein-based food we eat, the more protein we're going to be, and I know there's a concern about eating too much protein, which I think is largely unfounded. I think, anybody that goes on a higher protein diet is going to see they get leaner and their body composition improves. And you have a significant number of people in India now, despite eating largely vegetarian diets, that have heart disease, that have diabetes. They're starting to see, the beginnings of obesity. And those aren't good things. And the way to fix that is to stop eating really all the processed food, all the sugary things, all the oils that are now, the palm oil that is, probably used much of India now because of the proximity to palm oil. You did better on ghee. That's something that would be much better for people to continue eating ghee. Up the chicken, up the I don't know if pork is an option for you there as far as how much is available. Pork, lamb, chicken, other sort of fish, eggs, those things can be very, very good.
Another kind of food that has been trending a lot and has been facing a lot of criticism is meat, vegan based meats, Beyond Burger, etc. Do you think these can have long-term damages to the human body?
Yes, in the sense that it's just more trash. I mean, it's complete garbage food. It's completely processed, stuff that's not good for anyone. It's just in the category of other junk food. It's just, the more junk food we eat, the sicker we get, the more diabetic we get, the more obesity we have, the more hunger we have, the more mental illness we have, on and on and on. So it's just another one of these cheap, and this is what we see from the food industries. They want you to eat these cheap products that are very profitable for them, but they're not very good for us. And so this is just another in the long line of those foods. And they're going to tell you it's better for the environment, it's better for your health, it's more ethical. It's all nonsense. It's complete nonsense. It's all about making profit for these companies, and doesn't do you any benefit whatsoever to eat those.
Are there any strict rules for the carnivore diet? Are there things that I should not be eating and things that I should be eating to consider myself a carnivore?
Well, I mean, I tend to not be too prescriptive. Like I tell people, I'm not your mother. It's not a law. It's not an idea. Like veganism very much is ideologically based. How dare you eat an egg, or how dare you eat a mollusk or a scallop or something like that, really what we're looking for is what's going to work for you and what's going to give you the best health results. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. If you eat a meat, fully carnivorous diet and you have a piece of fruit here and there and it works for you, that's great. So that's the first thing. Just we want to focus on what's actually working for your health. Now, having said that, there are some people where they need to be very strict in the sense that they only need to eat animal products. And some people, dairy can be a problem. Some people, eggs can be a problem. So they end up eating things like some kind of meat, maybe like in your case, it might be just lamb only or something like that. So it depends on what you're dealing with. The more disease you're dealing with, particularly autoimmune diseases, gut issues, and you're probably going to have to be stricter and stricter. But outside of that, if you just say, hey, I just want to lose, I want to lose, 10 kilos or something like that, then you could probably just eat mostly animal products. You can have some spice. I know in India, you have wonderful spices to choose from. It's a very, spice dependent culture with the cuisine. And so, if you want to make, different flavor enhancements to that, some of the curries and different kormas and stuff like that you have, that's probably going to be fine for most people. You just have to avoid, I think the things clearly, the processed junk food, the sugars, the refined grains, the oils like the palm oils and maybe the soybean oil and things like that that are made into the Indian diet. If you avoid those things, you're going to do pretty well. We have some, like in our company, Revero, Revero.com, we have food lists and shopping lists and general advice. But like I said, I think as a general rule, anything that gets junk food out of your diet is going to be a good thing. Anything that gets meat out of your diet is going to be a not so good of a thing. So if we just kind of give the less junk food and the more meat we have, the better we're going to be in general. Where fruits and vegetables and other foods come in there, it's going to depend on your tolerance and how sick you are. And some people, believe it or not, there's some people that don't do well with a lot of vegetables in their diet. It gives them a lot of digestive problems. They get bloated. It ends up causing issues. Some people, struggle with that. So you just have to realize where you are and who you are and what you can tolerate. At the end of the day, if eating a diet that is 70% meat-based and 30% fruits and vegetables works for you, and you lose weight and you get leaner and your diabetes gets better, you lose weight around your belly, those are great things. So I would just focus on that.
Do you ever feel tempted to eat something outside of your normal carnivore diet?
Yeah, from time to time, sure. And sometimes I do. It's like, I don't live as a monk. I'm not, I'm not doing that, but not often. Usually I'm pretty content. Probably 99% of the time it's steak, it's eggs, something like that for me. That works really well for me. My child has a birthday. I might have a little piece of cake with them to celebrate, but I don't really do that very often. It's pretty rare for me. And I don't really get cravings for that. My appetite is so well controlled. And I honestly care about my health. And so I usually, the nice thing about a meat-based diet is it provides a very high amount of satiety. So you're not constantly thinking about food. You're not constantly being tempted by these other foods because all those foods are not going anywhere. They're always going to be around you. You can't walk down the street and not smell something that smells great, or go by a restaurant or your friend's house or something like that. They're always going to be pushing those foods around you. And so if you're satisfied with what you've eaten, then you generally don't get tempted by those foods as much. It's something, but yeah, I think those things still taste good. They taste good to me, but I have them very, very infrequently. And I think it works really well. And I think most people, again, instead of worrying about how perfectly pure your diet is, I would worry about how am I doing physically? How am I doing mentally? How am I doing performance-wise? And that's what I focus on.
Yeah. Can you tell me a little bit about Revero and what they do?
Absolutely. So we have, many of us, myself included, have come to realize that the healthcare system as practiced in the West, I don't know how it is in India, but we are not doing a very good job, particularly when it comes to chronic disease. We're spending more and more money. In the United States, we spend $3+ trillion US dollars a year on disease, and most of it's chronic disease, and we're not getting much for that. And most people are still sick. Many people are on pills. The healthcare system is just, here's another pill, here's another pill, here's a supplement, here's something. And we don't give much emphasis on really fixing the disease problem or getting at the cause of the problem, which most of the time, from particularly these chronic diseases, are going to be something nutrition related, lifestyle related, exercise related, sleep related. So we're focusing specifically on that. And so what we use or sometimes elimination diets like a carnivore diet. We have AI that helps us to look at an individual's unique demographic situation, their unique health challenges, and we can mix that with the types of food that we know. For instance, we know that, say, someone with Crohn's disease is going to respond with these foods in a way that they can either tolerate them or not, versus, another disease like, say, diabetes is going to have a different set of foods that are going to be problematic for them. And then also on top of that is going to be who the person is. How old are they? What sex are they? What's their nationality? What's their ethnic background? How active are they? How much exercise do they do? What kind of sunlight exposure? All those things, we put all those factors in, we run it into AI algorithms, and it gives us an idea of what a diet should look like. And that's great. I mean, telling somebody this is what's going to work for you. And the problem we have then is, how do we get people to implement that and stay on it? To have some long-term adherence to that. And that's the other part of the thing we do with, having app-based feedback, doctors, coaches constantly working with them, providing support, providing accountability, providing motivation, providing, facilitating to do it, getting constant feedback, looking at biomarkers, other objective and subjective markers of how they're doing, and then having doctors that are on this platform that work directly with the patient with the focus of getting people off medications and treating the root cause of disease, and if possible, reversing the diseases. And so that's our focus. And so we are in the middle of raising several $1 million to allow us to expand on that. So we've done that pretty successfully. And so over the next few years, I expect we will grow to a very large company and be able to treat, eventually millions of people.
Interesting. Do you think big pharma is a big problem in the 21st century?
Yeah, I do. I mean, they have a lot of influence and control over the healthcare system, the media, the way people think and act. There is, a lot of money to be made in the pharmaceutical industry, and that is a primary goal. And health concerns, are unfortunately a secondary goal. I think in the early days, there was probably a lot more, there was a lot more good intentions, but that has been supplanted by pretty much profit motive. And I think the pharmaceutical industry it's one of the most powerful industries in the world. In the United States, they spend more lobbying dollars than any other industry, more than defense contractors, more than oil and gas. They spend the most money in lobbying. So our policies are largely, unfortunately, and our politicians are unfortunately basically representatives of the pharmaceutical industry due to their conflicts of interest. So yeah, it is a problem.
Yeah, I think the situation has become far worse in the past 2 years. What is your opinion on the COVID pandemic and the resulting government mandates such as lockdowns and mandatory masking, etc.?
Yeah, I think they were largely mistakes. I think the policies were not based in science to any significant degree. I think what we know about infectious disease, rather than quarantining the whole population, it's you want to take care of the vulnerable populations. That's what we should have done from the beginning. We should have said, the elderly, the people with significant immunocompromised positions should be taken care of, given the best equipment, and isolate those folks if needed. Vaccination should obviously be a choice. As a physician, I think patients should have a choice on any medical procedure. Doesn't matter how effective or safe it is, you still are allowed that choice. And where they mandated it, or effectively made it a mandate where you lose your job or become socially isolated because you decide you didn't want to do that, I think that's wrong. I think that hopefully people have learned. I mean, we're seeing now how ineffective these vaccines have become throughout the world. They don't seem to work, particularly as these new variations of these viruses come out, which they always do. The fact that we're still using a vaccine was developed over 2 years ago to treat a virus that largely doesn't exist in the same form anymore is really kind of head scratching. The only thing I can think of is profit motive. I think and I think most people have become very skeptical of the pharmaceutical industry because of that. And I think that probably is a good thing, to be honest. I think they need to be held better accountable. Their lack of transparency, their lack of accountability, the lack of liability for a product. is a problem, I think. And I think Pfizer withdrew its application in India because India wanted independent testing, and they weren't willing to do that. That should set up a red flag as to, the safety and efficacy of some of these things in my mind. Now, again, I'm not a virologist, I'm not an immunologist, I'm not an infectious disease specialist, but as a physician in general, I think when you take away choice and you don't provide full informed consent, or you try to coerce people, it's always a bad thing. I think it's unethical to do so, and I think we've seen a lot of that. And unfortunately, the United States has become very heavily politicized, with left-leaning people, promoting this, and people on the right side not really in favor of that. And it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a political issue, but it has become, and that's a very sad thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I think facts have been sidelined because of politics, and it seems like there is no place for criticism either. Anybody who criticizes the vaccines or the pharmaceutical companies are labeled as people who are spreading misinformation, and there's unfortunately no room for criticism right now. Uh,
Yeah, I mean, I see that. I mean, like I said, there were even peer-reviewed, well-respected journals which were censored because they didn't have the studies that they showed were not in line with the official narrative. And I think it's it's actually a travesty. It's basically it's not how science is done. Science is about questioning, and you should, if you can't
exactly.
question things, then you're not being scientific, and you can't follow science when you don't look at things that question that. So it's the censorship and the silencing has been terrible.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. Just looking at the data in the United States, the average person who died of COVID had not one or two, but four comorbidities. And almost 80% of COVID deaths occurred among those who were obese. So, isn't obesity, diabetes, and comorbidities the real pandemic?
Well, yeah, you can make that argument, certainly, and that's always the case for any infectious disease, or really anything. These are the demographics that always get sick and die. The elderly and the sort of metabolically unhealthy people. The problem is we have such a high percentage of the population that is in that category. There was a study in the United States that showed that something like 88% of the people were not considered metabolically healthy, based on several different definitions. And so the question becomes, should we work on that aspect of it? And that's something that I, myself, and many other people have been saying the whole time. If you're worried about being sick from a pandemic or a respiratory illness, this would be a great time to consider losing weight, getting your blood sugar under control, getting some exercise, getting some sunshine, improving your vitamin D levels, on and on and on. And that has not been the statements coming out by any health officials in anywhere that I can see. I think El Salvador had a campaign where they talked about getting people healthier. El Salvador has been interesting that they've adopted Bitcoin as one of their national currencies. And so, but in the United States, the party line, they even asked I think Jen Psaki, the White House communications director, about getting people healthier. And she basically said, well, we're listening to the CDC and they haven't said anything, so we're not going to say anything like that. When it's clearly common sense. The whole entire wealth of medical literature would indicate that losing weight, becoming less obese, improving blood glucose is always going to help, in that situation. The fact that we just completely ignored that when we had the opportunity and the messaging opportunities and the money. We spent trillions of dollars on our COVID response. Even if 5% of that would have went to saying, hey, let's take this time to get out and walk and exercise and lose a few pounds and stop eating junk food, we probably would have saved, countless lives. And we didn't do that. And that was a huge tragedy in my view.
Yeah. As a result of this, a lot of people around the world are losing faith in authority in medical institutions. People are losing faith in CDC, WHO. Even here in India, people are losing faith in ICMR, that's the Indian authorities. Do you think this is a good thing, or do you think this will lead to catastrophe?
Well, it's definitely a double-edged sword. Because I think some of the, there can be good coming out of those organizations and agencies, and they if if they, because they have the resources and the facility to make a change in a positive direction, I think their messaging is wrong. I think their heavy-handedness is wrong, and it did undermine. And probably vaccine efforts for any vaccine in the future is going to be seriously compromised. They turned a lot of people into people that are opposed to vaccines, which wouldn't have been earlier. A lot of the other health messaging that they have, some of it I disagree with. Some of it I still think is wrong. I think some of the messaging around nutrition is wrong, as we've mentioned earlier. But I think, yes, I think it's good for people to question it. I think hopefully a response will be from these places to really look at the evidence and stop being bought. As the CDC has a huge conflict of interest. The FDA particularly. The FDA drug approval, 60% of our budget for FDA new drugs is being paid for by the pharmaceutical industry itself. And so when you have this sort of regulatory capture, it's rife with conflict of interest, and you should be right to question that. You should be right to sort of maybe not believe everything that's being said because of those tremendous conflicts of interest. And so I think there's room. Hopefully, we'll see where we'll say, my view would be, let's get the conflict of interest out of these organizations. I'm pessimistic that will actually happen, but I think that's what needs to happen. And so if these organizations are not going to be transparent, and they are not going to act in the interest of the people, but rather interest of corporations, and we should not trust them, and we should doubt them. And perhaps other independent agencies will step up and take that place, that are free from these conflicts of interest.
In today's day and age, what do you think are the biggest causes for chronic diseases?
Well, I think nutrition is probably the biggest. I think our poor diet, I think, that is clear. I think there's other lifestyle factors. I think sedentary behavior, the fact that we're not as active as we used to be, for many people is a big issue. I think the fact that we kind of accept it. This is another thing. We have this general acceptance that if I get to be 40, I'm supposed to have a little belly and my back's supposed to hurt, and I'm supposed to just take it easy and slow down. We have this collective consciousness that we expect to be sick as we get older. I don't know about in India, but here in the United States, that's the norm. That is very common. It's abnormal and it's not right, but it's become so common that people expect that. So their lack of standards as to what a normal, healthy person should look like. I'm 55 years old, and I think I'm a normal person, how a normal person should behave. I'm fit, I'm active, I stay in shape. To me, that's normal, but it's abnormal in today's society. So that's a big problem. But yeah, the diet of convenience, the fact that we have all this snack food, this readily processed and packaged food that is made for shelf life and convenience is literally not good for us. And so, going back to, cooking from whole ingredients, like our grandparents did, or something like that, would be much better for our health. Not getting enough sleep. Obviously we have, people everywhere just infatuated with cell phones and media, and are constantly, just spending all their time doing that. I think that's affecting our mental health. It's leading to less activity. It's leading to a decrease in social interaction in a normal fashion. We're interacting through a phone rather than in person, and I think those things are problems. I think lack of exercise. I think, those things, in addition to, there's a difference between sedentary behavior, we just sit around all day, as opposed to working and walking, and actual exercise where you might be doing some strength training or some conditioning. All those things lead to it. But all those things, I think food is probably the number one. I think our horrible diet is the biggest driver of disease, without a doubt.
You've been maintaining your health for a very long time, for decades. I'm sure you've been researching on nutrition, on fitness. What is the secret to long-term physical and mental health?
Well, I think understanding that it's a priority, and realizing that's something you need to be aware of and conscious of and strive to do. You've got to say, I'm going to do this and make sure that happens. And then I think, as far as, my, like I said, when it comes to body composition, we hear you are what you eat. Well, the more protein you have relative to other foods, the more muscle you're going to have. And so that's pretty clear. So if your diet is higher in protein, maybe 35% of your calories are coming from protein, 40%, 25%, somewhere in that range, you're going to end up with a better body composition over the long haul. I think just being, consistent with activity, like I don't know, I'm standing right now. I could be sitting down for this inning, but I choose to stand because I know that standing for me is going to give me more benefit than sitting all day. So I tend to stand more. I exercise pretty much every day. It's just part, it's like brushing my teeth. It's like sleeping and brushing my teeth. It's part of my normal daily thing. And sometimes it's very short. I might even do a 5-minute workout. I might do 100 push-ups. It takes me 5 minutes, and that may be my whole workout for the day. Or I might hop on a rowing machine and row 1,000 meters in 3 minutes. That may be my whole workout. But every day I'm doing something. Now some workouts are longer, obviously, but I try to every day. Occasionally I'll take a day off, but almost every day I'm doing something with regard to what can I do to stay fit, stay active, so I can enjoy life. If I spend 5 minutes a day working out intensely, then the rest of the time I can do all these other neat things. It's not like it's a huge time commitment for me all the time. I enjoy training, whether it's doing jujitsu or playing with my kids, or just going out and doing hiking in the woods or things like that. Because I'm fit and active, I can continue to do that, and hopefully I can do that into my 70s, 80s, and 90s if I live that long.
Yeah, that's very impressive, Dr. Shawn Baker. Thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate it. Thanks for the opportunity. Have a great day, and good to see folks in India, and hopefully get to visit one day. I'd love to see it sometime.